Hi everyone, and welcome to today's Sales User webinar, where we will be covering the engineering review with things such as job approvals and commissions. My name is Brandon Vieira, and leading the way today will be Stephen Nasty. After this webinar, you'll be able to collaborate with users and engineers for review and assistance, submit and keep track of job status and approvals, as well as how the approvals work and function, and understand how the commission module works and calculates, and where to check commissions on a job. As always, we want you to get the most out of your time today, so if you have questions at any time throughout the webinar, don't be shy. Even if it's because we've gone too fast and you want to see or hear something again, just let us know in the chat. We have a lot to get through, so let's get started.
Well, awesome. Thanks, Brandon. Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar. So we're going to be doing a couple different modules today. Going to be talking about our engineering, our approvals, and then some other kind of odds and ends stuff thrown in there as well. So we going to be kind of jumping around with a little bit, some commission stuff as well. So I'm going to have two tabs open right now. So I'm going to be doing a little bit of both. So for approvals, for me to really kind of show it to you guys, I need to be kind of the role of the approver and the approvee. So I wanted to show kind of just a little bit of both first. So let's go ahead and focus on our main window here. So for this, I want to show, starting with kind of the modules and how to see what you have and things like that. In Tools, System Configuration, kind of a good place to start is by looking at your user. So if you have access to system configuration, if you don't, this is a group, right? So this is something that might be grayed out for you. But if you have access to it, or if you are an admin and you're listening here, tools, system configuration, you select your user, and then under approvals, you're going to see your approval system, whether it's pre and post, and then you have your commission system here. So kind of just some miscellaneous troubleshooting stuff to start, and then kind of to go into the webinar and how that, how each of these modules work. You have your two approval systems, your pre-approval and your post. For those of you that aren't familiar, pre-approval is our approval system when a job is kind of in progress. Before a job is won, you have to go through the pre-approval process, where an approver reviews your job, reviews your quotes, makes sure everything looks okay. Ultimately, when they sign off on it, it goes back to the owner of the job, and the owner of the job ultimately sends the quote out to the customer and hopefully wins it. Post approval is kind of that last check before it is officially won, where pre-approval is like, hey, you know what, let's check your margins, let's check your items, check your parts, things like that. Post approval goes to the approver, and the approver itself actually wins the quote as well. So it's slightly different. It's just a matter of when the quote gets that check. Some companies do both, some just do one. It's totally up to you. Commission plans are assigned here in the commissions tab. Right now, I built a commission plan prior to the webinar. Just some things to note. It's grayed out. Just click on edit. All your commission plans can be built out here in your system. Use commission plan rates is the deciding factor for the commissions to calculate. So once you assign a commission plan, just click on their little radio button to say use commission plan rates. Okay. Other than that, some other miscellaneous things to know here. People Manager, if you ever are approving somebody else, or let's say you're trying to find, maybe you don't have access to approve somebody else's jobs, by selecting your user on the left-hand side and going to the right-hand side, looking up a person. So let's say we're looking for Tracy Black, combine the two names there. You want to make sure that you have approvals. Just checkbox right here gives you access to approve any of the quotes. Approval emails sends you a notification that says, Tracy has sent over an email for approval, a quote for approval. And then you have some other odds and ends things here that really aren't too crazy. Commissions, really for this webinar, allows you to see that user's commission rate. But I would say those are kind of the three for this webinar to focus on. Approvals, that checkbox gives you access to approve Tracy's job. So think of it this way. On the left-hand side, this is the person who's approving this person. So approvals checks that off. Approval emails notifies you. Okay. So that's the kind of boring behind the scenes stuff here. So what we'll do is we'll go into our actual quotes and kind of just to get you familiarized with where things are, how things work. So in our system, let's go ahead and search under my proposals. And we'll look under, let's start with the commissions piece. That's pretty much the easier one of the two. So we'll open up one of our proposals. If you are an everyday user of the application, which I'm assuming most of you are, your commissions tab is going to be on the right-hand side of the screen under this commissions window right here. How this works is if you have access to a commission plan and a commission plan assigned to you, which we do now, the commission rate will calculate based off of that plan's calculations behind the scenes. Generally speaking, commissions are imported into our system, either in-house here at WeSuite, or the admin at your company will build them, kind of build out all the rates, all the plans, things like that. So as an everyday user, you're going to your commissions tab and you're taking a look at my commissions. We have this refresh commissions rate. So if you click on this button, if you ever are making any changes, it will refresh the commissions for you. We do have a setting in my settings that is an auto calculate commissions, where if you want to just bypass the refresh commissions button, it'll automatically refresh the commissions for you. But 9 times out of 10, people typically will just have the refresh button here. And the reason for that is the auto refresh commission typically makes the job opening and responding a little bit slower, just because it's constantly, the system is checking to see if there's anything that's going on behind the scenes to refresh the commission rate. So in the vein of just people trying to be time efficient, they'll keep the refresh button here. Just keep on clicking the refresh once any changes were to be made for the job. Beyond that, the only other things to know here is we have commission splits, production splits, and then manual adjust. Those 3 tabs, generally speaking, are very niche and very kind of specific to very like unique situations. Commission splits are, generally speaking, if you want to split commission with somebody else. Let's say you are a co-owner of a job. You can select the user, select the split percentage. So let's just say I want to set it to 50%. This will then take the max amount of commission, which is $223.57, split it 50%, and it'll give Tammy, in this case, $111.78. System will then refresh, and we'll see here that we have a commission split. Production split, same concept. If you ever are doing a split of ownership of a job, you can do kind of have it that way too, where basically you can have the total amount, not the commission amount, split. Lastly, manual adjust is, generally speaking, an admin right where you're able to manually assign a specific commission rate. So I saw a question come in. What does selecting the summary report email do in People Manager? That's a great question, Michelle. So in that email right here, so let me just bring it up for you really quick. Search for my user. So the question that came in was talking about this checkbox right here. So let's just find a user. There's going to be summary report email. So what this does is when a customer or when a sales rep wins a quote, it will send to whomever has this checkbox selected a summary report email of just information about the job. So it'll basically will give you, if you've ever seen the summary report within the estimate, so it would be this guy right here, it will spit out a, kind of give you a PDF of this as an email. And it'll give you basically a, like a one sheet of it where basically in the body of the email, you'll see, the total sell, the GPM, materials, labor, things like that. So that's just a checkbox where if you just want to be a little more kind of proactive about seeing what reps are winning, you can get a PDF of that. It's a great question, though. Yeah, and that's pretty much commissions. I would say beyond that, really, as an everyday user, not really too much to know. Commission splits may come up occasionally, maybe, but really from your perspective, you're monitoring my commissions, and this is going to be your section. You'll notice here that my commission just got halved because of the commission split that we had done. Okay, awesome. Very quick with commissions, not really too much to do for the everyday user. Moving over to our next portion, which we had talked about, which was approvals. So approvals is where my handy dandy second tab of WeSuite comes in. So approvals function in two ways, like I mentioned. You have your pre and your post, depending on your system, depending on how your organization set it up. Most companies will do one of the two, some do neither, some do both. So there's really no right or wrong answer to this. With approvals, we'll go ahead and take any quote here. So let's just take my second window. We'll go over to, if I can click the right one, there you go. So let's take Tom, for example. Now Tom has a job. Let's go ahead and open this bad boy up. And we'll create a second one for this as well for later. Let's change this from engineering. Engineering is one of the modules we are going to be talking about in a little bit. So let's go ahead and just reset this. So with this, let's refresh, open our last estimate. So with approvals, you're going to see this little button on the bottom left corner that says whether or not an approval is required. So in this case, we have post-approval being required for this quote. So let's go ahead and add some parts. I'm going to search for camera just because I know I'm going to get some results. Find the one of these guys here. And let's just give it a quantity of 500. As you can see right now, we have a labor a price of $117,000. Post approval is still required, which is good. But if we wanted to look at our pre-approval, which I believe I would say most people probably use pre-approval, let's go find Tom one more time. Let's click on edit. Let's go to approvals. And let's find, I believe webinar approval might be the one that's good for this, since it in fact is a webinar. Pre-approval is required. Now, what I wanted to show is if I remove that, and it's not going to look like that, unfortunately, but there are certain triggers to approvals. So with approvals, there are kind of thresholds that you can hit where you have, a dollar amount. Sometimes it's a particular item, a job type, a labor type. It could be a GPM, things like that. So in this case, this is seemingly automatically being triggered already, which probably has either a very low threshold or is just it always requires pre-approval. In this case, we have our approvals tab. So now Tom's going to be in the position of the approver. So he's the one that is trying to get this job signed off on to ultimately send it to the customer. So he's going to go through approvals. He's going to click begin approval process. You can leave a note so you can say, hey Johnny, please see this quote and let me know how it looks. Okay. Pre-approval started. So now, as Johnny, as the other user, I'll get a ding shortly, which I just did. That basically means I just got an approval email notification saying that, a pre-approval has been started. This is the job number, your approval group, and a little bit of the information as well as the note that was left from the user. So switching over to Johnny's dashboard here. Let me go here to pre-approval to refresh this. I now see, this is the perspective of the approver. So this is the one that's signing off on the quotes. So Johnny goes in, he goes to the estimates to pre-approve. And this is an interface here that I didn't get a chance to talk about before. But what this does is this gives you a nice little a view or interface, depending on how you want to phrase it, of all of your quotes that meet a certain criteria. So estimates to pre-approve. This is a tab where approvers go to look at anything that currently requires reviewing. So all of these quotes were submitted by different sales reps. Tells you the sales rep, tells you the approval group that you belong to. The project ID is a job number, and then information about the job and the customer. This last one that we looked for, admin. So this is basically telling me that because of I'm in the admin approval group, Tom Cash submitted this job to me, this information. So I can go ahead and double click on that to open it up. And then as the approver, you're going to see a little bit of a different interface here where it says started, not approved. So in this case, Johnny goes in. He's not the owner of the job. It says approving the estimate for Tom. I go in here and I say, Tom, let's maybe change the unit cost or the unit sell, things like that. So I go to the approvals tab. I can approve it if everything looks okay, or I can reject it and leave a note if something's off. But let's for the purposes of this, let's say everything looks okay. So we'll say approved. Looks good. PC. Continue. So the estimate's fully approved. Now, some of our companies, some of our clients have multiple tiers of approvals. So it'll start with, in this case, it's the admin group, but there might be, sales management, then there might be regional director or whatever it may be. So we keep it easy. We have just the one line for approvals, but some companies have multiple tiers. We'll click on OK. So now that'll go back to Tom, who then has the last chances to review it, make sure everything looks okay, and then ultimately send it out to the customer. So estimates to pre-approve and estimates to post-approve, these are exclusive to the approvers. So the role that Johnny's doing right now, the one who's signing off on the jobs, these two tabs are meant for him. Pre-approval status, engineering status, these are the inverse to these. So a pre-approval status, what this basically means is if I was logged in as Tom, which we'll see in a little bit, I have a job that's waiting for pre-approval, but I want to track it, this is the interface and the view for you. So you'll see that, in this list, you'll see that any jobs that are pending approval will be listed out here, as well as any jobs that were recently approved. Same thing for engineering status. We haven't had a chance to talk about that yet, but I will go into it in a little bit here. So we'll go back to Tom's proposal. We'll see here. Let's go ahead and refresh our interface. Right now, we have our list of items. So we have our interface here. So just require a quick manual refresh going in between the tabs. But we see here that the job was approved, so it was in green. The project ID, project number, name, estimate, all that good stuff, and then the last action. So if there is a note that goes along with the job, you'll see the last action will say approved. It looks good. If you want to clear these out, you can. This is purely a view that just helps you stay organized. So we'll go into my proposals. Now, as Tom, as the approvee, goes in, he sees here that this is changed to be approved with the gold star. However, post-approval is still required for this. So now we would go into our post-approval. Now this is typically why a lot of our clients will either use one or the other, because there is some overlap here. We'll begin the post-approval. We'll give here, the only thing that's different now is we'll get this prompt that says winning quote. Please select the winning quote to attach the post-approval. So in this, we'll click Create Document. This is your quote package or your revision, whichever terminology you prefer to use. In this case, we'll select a brand new quote package. And what this does is this will create a snapshot of this quote to the system. So we'll see here that this was the quote name, the revision, when it was updated, the dollar amount, and when it was sent. So 7/16. Click on Continue. You can have a note. Please advise. Continue. Post-approval started. Estimate will close out. Same concept. We go back to our good friend Johnny. He'll now have an estimate to post approve. He just got a ding letting him know. Same concept, approval group, sales representative, all that good stuff. A summary of the job as well. So, Michelle, to answer your question, this is kind of what it's going to look like. So this is what you would get via email if you have that group right turned on. You would get something like this. If I were to click into the quote, I will then have the exact same thing here, started not approved. I would go into post approvals. I would see any of the notes here. Please advise. Approved it. Continue. User does not have the approval rights for this group. It's already approved. Okay, stand by 1 second. So if you see that pop up, it's actually a good segue for this. If you search for the user, so let's search for Johnny, and let's make sure that he belongs to every approval group in the system, which looks like he does. Click on save. And let's try this one more time. So expand here. We see his user under here. And let's try this one more time. Interesting. Okay. So that might be an error with this. I might have to take a look at the behind the scenes setup of that. But the gist here is that if I were to click on approved, it would then move and give me a prompt for a job the day the job was won. So it would default to today's date. You can change it to whatever date you want, but generally speaking, 9 times out of 10, you would select today's date. So for whatever reason, we're getting an issue with this, but that's okay. That's really all there is with approvals. That kind of gives you both ends as the approvee and as the approver. To know there's kind of a mix here between the two. And then lastly, guys, the last little area I want to talk about today, and then we'll turn over for some questions. And then if nothing else, we'll give you guys back some time in your day. Lastly is the engineering. So the engineering module has a couple configuration pieces, very minor. We go back to our user. We click on edit. In general, there's going to be an option here called project engineer. What this does is this signifies this user as an eligible engineer. What that means in our system is if you were to click on a dropdown within your system status, you would find the engineering status there. You're able to assign this person as an engineer. What engineering does is it locks the job similarly to an approval, where you're able to send it to an engineer, but the engineer in this case is able to actually physically make changes to the quote. They can build out the estimate, they can add parts and all that good stuff. So Johnny is an engineer. So let's go back to our other user here. Let's go back to Tom. Let's go ahead and copy this job. The only difference here that I'm going to do is I'm going to go into status. I'm going to select engineering. And then here I'm going to have, we call it system designer in our system, but in your system, I think the default would just be project engineer. You would select your user. So we're going to select system designer, Johnny Cash, and then click on save. Now, as the owner of the job, you're going to get this pop-up. This is due to a change in status engineering. We Suite will then change the quote to read only. The quote will only be able to edit it by the assigned engineer. Same concept, you can leave a note. And what this will do is this will send an email to the engineer. So again, it's back to me as Johnny. If I flip over to Johnny, and I go to my Estimates Engineer tab, I'll see here that we have a quote waiting for us. So this is the only tab that we didn't get a chance to talk to. So Estimates Engineer, this is the version where if you are the engineer itself. So if you are an engineer in your company, you're building quotes out, This is where your queue would be in. Engineering status would be if you are the person that's just sent it over. So again, Tom, in this case, would be the person that's looking in engineering status. Johnny would be the one that's looking in estimates engineer. So what we're going to do is we're going to double click and open this quote up. And here we're going to see that the big difference is this is now okay to edit. So I can go into accounting, search for parts and things like that. So let's say that I went in here and I was like, you know what, Tom, you need 5 more, cameras for this. And took at your labor. Your labor was off by 2 hours. Just add 2. Once I'm done, simple as changing this drop down back to in progress, clicking on save. You can have a pop-up that says you want to send an email back, edit parts and labor. Okay. It'll then go back to the owner of the job. You would see here engineering status is blank in this case because it's now been complete. It goes into that quote. You'll see the changes that were made. So the camera that we had added is listed out here. And then the labor hours that we had are broken out to 44. The owner of the quote will get a notification. I just got a ding right now that let me know that the estimate has been completed and placed back into your normal status. And from this point forward, what Tom can do is Tom can go through the approval process. So this really ultimately depends on how in-depth and how crazy you want to get with your your process. Engineering allows you to basically assign a quote to an engineer and they can do the work for you. They're the ones that are building the quote out. Approvals is the version that you're able to send it to somebody else for review before it hits the customer. So some of our companies and some of our clients use both, and they'll say the sales rep does the work where they talk to the customer, they gather the information, they kind of set the framework up, they create the job. The engineer is the one that's actually doing any of the work on the site or on the field, so they know what parts and cameras to add. So they'll add the cameras in the engineering review. Then it would go back to the the sales manager, director, whomever it may be, to sign off on the pricing and things like that before it goes to the customer. So those are the 3 modules. I would say there's a ton of different modules that we have to offer, but I would say those are our core 3 that we work with and have to really talk about today. I would say those are kind of the 3 core that drive a lot of the work behind the scenes on proposals. Any questions on anything I covered today, guys? All right, looks like we're looking good. So I appreciate your time today, guys. Today was a little on the shorter side, but what we wanted to do is kind of showcase some of these modules to everybody here, just to make sure that if you are using them, to get the most out of them, but also to make you more just comfortable, more familiar with them as well. So I don't see any questions. So Brandon, I'm going to turn it over to you to wrap us up and let us know what's going down the pipeline.
Thank you.